Memphis Pride was a lot more joyful this weekend after a federal judge blocked Tennessee's controversial ban on drag performances, calling it unconstitutional, vague, and overboard, and a violation of protections under the First Amendment. The law was challenged by Memphis-based theater group Friends of George. Tennessee was the first state to enact an anti-drag law, with more than a dozen other states considering them. NBC's Antonia Hilton spoke to about a dozen drag performers in Tennessee in the lead-up to the ruling.
The agenda is to just exist and to feel valid.
The agenda is to be able to go to the bathroom without having to worry about being punched in the face.
NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton joins me now. So, Antonia, what does this ruling mean? And are we still likely to hear more from other states? Some
Absolutely.
16 states were considered.
In fact, Montana just passed a very similar law. And what we're seeing is state after state kind of copying some of the same language. And so these are laws that Republican activists, lawmakers say are about protecting children, keeping them from sexually explicit content. But performers have long been arguing that this goes against their First Amendment rights, and that also these laws are so vague that they open themselves up to kind of discriminatory enforcement, law enforcement agencies in different communities interpreting them in different ways. And we saw this Trump-appointed federal judge agree with the performers this weekend, which in some cases surprised some folks in Tennessee. They're relieved, but there's still this sense of fear right now, because this was just one piece of many pieces of legislation moving through Tennessee and other parts of the country that the LGBTQ community feels have targeted them. I talked with the senator who wrote this legislation. Take a listen to some of our conversation. Have you been to drag shows?
Have not. But I've seen videos. I've seen videos of drag. Well, and I guess I should say, have I been to places where a man was dressed as a woman and performing or singing, and maybe they were dressed, it was a Halloween party and they were dressed up as Dolly Parton? Of course I have.
Are you trying to send a signal?
Of course
that
not.
Some types of communities, some types of people aren't welcome here in Tennessee?
The only signal I'm trying to send is that you shouldn't be doing sexually graphic, you shouldn't be simulating sex acts in front of children.
That same senator is now looking at his options. It looks like Republicans may be pushing the attorney general to potentially appeal this to the Sixth Circuit. And so, while people, LGBTQ community members, performers are feeling some of that relief right now, the reality is they think that this fight really isn't over yet, Andrea.
Well, it's really interesting because sexual performances are not banned. Other kinds of sexual performances are not banned from most of these states.
I had that conversation with that senator, actually. I asked him, I was like, there's Hooters here in Tennessee. People are allowed to bring their kids there. People can bring their kids to football games where people are dressed sometimes in, not that much clothing. And he seemed to see these as separate kinds of entertainment and events. So,
Antonia, thank you very much for bringing us that story. We appreciate it. And joining me now is Micah Winter-Cole, the board member of Memphis-based theater company Friends of George's that challenged the ban. So what does this victory mean to you and to the drag performers at Friends of George's?
Hi, Andrea. It's lovely to be here with you. It means a great deal to Friends of George's. It's surreal. We not only we did this because we had to do this, right? So there was not another option for us. This is the life that we lead. This is an integral part of who we are. And the state put a barrier there, so we had to do this. And drag in general means a lifestyle to us. So for the state and the legislator here to pursue some kind of ban in any regard is threatening to us on all levels.
What do you think what is behind this attack, this political attack against drag culture?
They keep talking about how it's about children, but if you look at the language of the bill, because we already have obscenity laws here that prohibit sexual acts from happening in front of children, I would argue that this is sending a message to the queer community here. And not only that, it's so extremely broad that it is threatening to people who self-identify as something other than what they were born as gender-wise, people who identify as non-binary, people who choose not to identify and just choose to wear and self-express themselves and how they wish with their clothing. This bill targets male and female impersonators, but it doesn't define that. So it leaves it open for all sorts of people to be discriminated against.
And what is your response to the state senator, or the majority leader, who proposed this and who talked to our colleague Antonia Hilton?
You know, when we were in court, the Trump-appointed judge that we had, Thomas Parker, Judge Parker, asked a question to the state that I thought was pretty resolute and concise. He said, "I go to Grizzlies games. I enjoy the Grizzlies. I'm a big fan. That's our basketball team here." He said, "The Grizz girls dance around in scantily clad outfits, bikinis, and they're largely enjoyed by people of all ages, and they're at every game." He asked, what would happen under this bill if a male performed in that same exact outfit? And the state was befuddled by this, and their only response, which tells me that they are after a certain group of people, their only response was to ask, is that person going to wear a wig? As if that defines something or makes it more illegal. It's they're not necessarily after us because of something that we might do in front of children. They're after us for identifying or impersonating something that isn't their ideal. So I'd say to him that he is very much aware that this is not about children, that it's about freedom of speech and the persecution of a subset of our community.
Micah Winter Cole, thank you very much. Congratulations on your victory in court.